She was only a little girl when something happened in church that no one could explain. One moment, she was praying beside her parents, and the next, everyone saw the look on her face. Whatever she witnessed that morning would leave the entire parish in silence, and the story that followed would spread far beyond their small Italian town. It began in the quiet heart of northern Italy, far from fame or spectacle. On a cold morning, December 13th of 1987, in the city of Padua, a baby girl was born to Paolo Digan and Paola Francescetto. They named her Laura. The same day, the church honored Saint Lucy, patroness of light. From the beginning, that name would feel prophetic. The family lived an ordinary life, simple routines, evening prayers, neighbors who waved from balconies, but their daughter radiated a brightness that everyone noticed. She was curious, energetic, and unafraid to laugh too loudly. Music drew her instantly. She danced before she could speak clearly. At family gatherings, she would sing until her mother lifted a finger to remind her that prayer came before dessert. Faith, for Laura, was never forced. It grew naturally, like breathing. Her parents often said that she seemed older than her years. Before every doctor's visit or small childhood fear, she folded her hands and whispered, "Jesu, stay with me." To adults it sounded sweet. To Laura it was serious. She believed those words built an invisible bridge between herself and heaven. That trust would soon be tested. When she turned 2, doctors discovered a tumor pressing against the delicate bones of her face. The diagnosis stunned the family. Overnight, laughter gave way to hospital corridors, white coats, and the smell of disinfectant. Photographs from that period show a toddler with wide eyes and bandages framing her smile, eyes too aware for their age, but still bright. Her grandmother, Assunta, refused to surrender to despair. She wrote directly to Pope John Paul II, asking for prayers and a blessing for her granddaughter. Weeks later, the family received a letter from the Vatican, a message of comfort, a rosary, and the assurance of the Holy Father's prayer. The Pope, they were told, had been moved by the story of the little girl in Padua who prayed before every treatment. Laura, still barely able to write her name, insisted on sending something back. She drew colorful shapes, hearts, stars, and a smiling sun, and enclosed a coin for poor children. Her parents mailed it, not realizing that small gesture would one day appear in articles describing the child whose faith illuminated suffering. Months of operations followed. Scars changed her face, but they never altered her spirit. Nurses spoke of her kindness, how she thanked everyone after each injection. At night, she pressed a small picture of Padre Pio under her pillow and fell asleep to recordings of the rosary spoken in the saint's voice. Even when pain woke her, she whispered along until the words carried her back to rest. By her 5th birthday, Laura could read short prayers on her own. She loved catechism and often corrected adults when they skipped a line of grace at meals. The priests who met her said she had a startling sense of presence, joy, and gravity intertwined. She once told her teacher, "When we pray, we open a window for Jesus to look inside." No one yet imagined how far that window would open. For now, the family clung to the small victories. A day without fever, a smile that returned after tears. In a world where faith often fades behind hospital doors, theirs deepened. They began to realize that this child, fragile yet fearless, was leading them rather than the other way around. And somewhere beyond the pain and routine, a story was beginning, one that would carry the scent of hospitals and the sound of hymns, and that would soon draw eyes far beyond Padua. In the spring of 1990, the hospital released Laura for a few months of rest. The Digan home filled again with music. Her father repaired the old cassette player, and every evening, as dinner simmered on the stove, recordings of children's choirs drifted through the rooms. Laura sang along even when her face hurt, her soft voice sometimes breaking but never stopping. Her mother said that when Laura sang, fear itself seemed to retreat. It was her way of praying twice. During those rare weeks of calm, visitors noticed that the child's cheerfulness had deepened into something gentler, almost luminous. When a neighbor came to complain about life's troubles, Laura listened carefully and said, "You must ask your angel to help you. He is waiting." The woman left in tears, carrying more comfort than she expected from a 6-year-old. That summer, the doctors announced a new treatment, a bone marrow transplant. The risks were enormous, but the family agreed. Before leaving for the hospital, Laura asked her mother to bring her drawing book and a few blank envelopes. In the waiting room, she wrote small letters childlike, full of color, addressed to the Pope, to Padre Pio, and to "My Guardian Angel." Her grandmother delivered the one for Rome. The rest she slipped under her pillow. The staff, moved by the sight, called her La Piccola Santa, the little saint. The operation succeeded beyond expectation. For the first time in years, Laura could attend kindergarten and catechism with other children. Her classmates remembered her as bright and kind, with a quiet humor that lifted the room. She corrected spelling mistakes with patience and loved reading simple stories of saints. When someone asked why she always wore a small medal around her neck, she answered, "It reminds me that heaven is near, and we shouldn't forget to wave." But illness never truly released her. Periodic fevers returned, then fatigue, then the long absences from school. She endured them without complaint, praying aloud for other sick children she had met in the wards. Her mother once found her whispering, "Jesus, I give you my pain. Use it for someone who is sad." It was not something a 6-year-old could have learned from a catechism book. In July 1994, while visiting friends for a rosary gathering, the extraordinary began. During the 5th decade, Laura suddenly looked upward, her expression intent. Her mother thought she had lost concentration, but then Laura exclaimed softly, "I see an angel." The room fell silent. She described what she saw with precise innocence. "He is small like Marco, her brother, blonde like cousin Gabriel, curly, dressed in white with transparent wings." Her tone was neither fearful nor excited, only certain, as if naming a friend who had just entered. After that evening, Laura often spoke quietly to her angel. Sometimes her mother overheard a whisper and asked who she was speaking to. Laura smiled. "You talk to your angel, and I talk to mine." The adults around her, torn between wonder and protectiveness, chose to listen rather than explain it away. Her parish priest advised them to let the child pray freely. Whatever was happening seemed to strengthen her peace. As the months passed, that invisible friendship deepened. Laura began to display a serenity that unnerved even her doctors. When they approached her bed with needles and charts, she would say, "It's all right, Jesus knows." Nurses said that working near her felt like entering a chapel. Pain surrounded her body but never reached her face. That autumn, her family took her for a short pilgrimage to San Leopoldo Mandic's shrine in Padua. There she prayed for other sick children, not for herself. She left a small handwritten note at the altar. "Thank you for the time I still have." No one saw her write it. Her mother found it later while tidying the pew. After the visit, Laura's health began to decline again, but her trust remained unshaken. She asked her mother to record Padre Pio's rosary tapes so she could listen even when pain kept her awake. At night, the house filled with his slow voice and the rhythmic echo of Ave Maria. Neighbors who passed outside said the Degan home sounded like a small chapel glowing behind the curtains. By early 1994, the doctors admitted that recovery was unlikely. Laura understood more than anyone dared to explain. One afternoon she said to her mother, "Don't be sad. If I go, I will still be your daughter. I'll just help you from the other side of the window." Those words, spoken without fear, revealed the center of her world, a child who had turned suffering into dialogue with heaven. The family, still praying for a miracle, began to realize that the miracle might already be happening inside her. And as the year unfolded, the line between visible and invisible would blur even further. In the nights ahead, Laura's room would fill with songs no one taught her and light no one turned on. The summer of 1994 came quietly to Padua. The roses in the garden wilted under the heat, and inside the Degan home a deeper silence had settled. The doctors had stopped speaking of recovery. They spoke instead of comfort. Yet Laura's spirit seemed untouched by fear. When her mother asked what she wanted most, she answered without hesitation, to see the place where Our Lady smiles. She meant Medjugorje. The request surprised everyone. Traveling that far with her fragile body felt impossible, but friends arranged a pilgrimage, and in July 1994 Laura and her mother joined a small group of pilgrims on the road to Bosnia-Herzegovina. The journey was long. Checkpoints, heat, and winding mountain roads tested every traveler. But the child never complained. She pressed her face to the bus window, whispering prayers for people they passed. When they finally reached the village, the afternoon sky was heavy with sun and the distant chime of bells. Laura climbed slowly toward the Church of St. James, each step measured but determined. At the top she looked around and whispered, "It feels like heaven is closer here." During those days she met Vika, one of the local visionaries. Photographs show Laura smiling shyly beside her, holding a rosary. Vika later called the family after Laura's death and said simply, "Laura was an angel of heaven." The pilgrimage restored something in the little girl: energy, serenity, perhaps a foretaste of what she had always sensed. Back home, the atmosphere in the Degan house began to change. At night, when pain kept her awake, her parents would hear her singing upstairs. The voice was soft but strong, floating through the corridors like a lullaby. One evening in August, convinced she was asleep, her family tiptoed to her room and froze in the doorway. Laura was sitting upright in bed, eyes lifted toward the ceiling, singing a hymn none of them had taught her. The melody was simple, the words repeated, "Let me lie close to you." Candlelight trembled on her face, as if the air itself were glowing. When she noticed her family, she smiled faintly and whispered, "Please, let me finish." They stepped back and listened until her voice faded into silence. The following weeks brought more visits, more moments the family could not explain. One night her mother heard Laura speaking in a low voice. Yes, I understand," she said. Paula entered quietly and asked who she was talking to. Laura answered, "Baby Jesus and Our Lady were sitting on my bed. They touched my head because it hurt." When her mother asked what they said, Laura hesitated and smiled. "It's a secret." She described the child Jesus as 5 or 6 years old, dressed in white. Mary, she said, wore a long gray robe, gentle and beautiful. Her mother realized that description matched the painting of the Black Madonna and child across from the bed. From then on, Laura asked that a candle be lit near the picture every evening. Pain intensified, but she never complained. On the Feast of the Transfiguration, August 6, 1994, Laura received confirmation. The bishop, moved by her devotion, visited the house to confer the sacrament privately. She wore a simple white dress and a red ribbon in her hair. Photographs show her smiling despite visible exhaustion. After that day, she began to lose her sight. Yet even in darkness, she continued to speak with gratitude. "Now I see with my heart," she told her brother, gently touching his face to recognize him. Sometimes she said that light returned during prayer, brilliant beams that caused pain but filled her with peace. Once, after a long night of fever, she told her mother, "The eyes of Jesus are bright, and they make me cry." Above her bed hung a print of the merciful Jesus, and Paula noticed how the candlelight's reflection made its painted rays seem to move across the wall. Whether it was imagination, grace, or coincidence, it brought them comfort. Neighbors began visiting more often, drawn by something they couldn't name. They found not despair, but an atmosphere of serenity, as though the house had become a chapel. Laura's father once said, "We expected to live around suffering. Instead, we live around peace." Through those nights of song and prayer, the child who had asked to see where Our Lady smiles was slowly turning her own room into that place. Every whispered hymn, every word of trust, felt like a step closer to the one she loved. And as September approached, the melody she had sung for weeks, "Let Me Live Close to You," was about to become more than a prayer. It was becoming a farewell. By early September 1994, Laura's voice had grown faint, but her will remained fierce. She could no longer walk without help, yet she insisted on beginning each morning with prayer. "One more day for Jesus," she whispered as her mother lifted her from the bed. The rhythm of the house revolved around her small acts of faith. A blessing before medicine, a sign of the cross before each visitor entered, a smile even when pain seized her breath. On the night of September 9th, her mother woke to the sound of a faint conversation. Laura was speaking again into the darkness. "Yes, yes, I understand." Paula approached the bed and asked gently who she was talking to. The child turned toward the voice she could no longer see and said, "Baby Jesus and the Madonna. They told me not to be afraid." Then she added softly, "They touched my forehead because it hurts." After a pause, she smiled. "It's a secret between us." The following morning, she asked for a candle to be lit near the image of the Divine Mercy that hung above her bed. The small flame wavered, throwing crimson and pale reflections across the wall, two colors that seemed alive, echoing the rays she once described from Jesus' heart. She told her mother that the light was warm like forgiveness. On the 10th of September, Laura's breathing became difficult. Her mother placed an image of Padre Pio on her throat and prayed aloud, asking him to help her little girl. At dawn, Laura whispered, "I want to receive Jesus early, before the sun." The priest was called immediately. He arrived before 4 a.m., bringing the Eucharist and the sacrament of the sick. The family gathered around the bed as he spoke the prayers of mercy. Laura's lips moved with every word. When the host touched her tongue, she relaxed, her features softening as though the weight of years had lifted. "Thank you," she breathed, the final phrase her family would ever hear. The candle beside the picture of the merciful Jesus flickered higher, then steadied. The priest later said the air in the room felt clearer than light. At 1:50 p.m. on September 11th, 1994, Laura Degan died peacefully at home, 6 years old. Her mother held her hand until it grew still. Outside, church bells rang for Sunday Mass. Inside, the family remained kneeling, whispering the same prayer that had carried them through every hospital, every sleepless night. "O blood and water, which gushed forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, I trust in you." News spread quickly through the parish. Neighbors who had visited out of sympathy now spoke of peace that lingered in the house. The priest who had given her communion called her a child who lived the gospel in 6 years. The Vatican's representative in Padua sent condolences and a blessing for the family, noting that the child who once wrote to the Pope now rested in the mercy she loved so deeply. Her small coffin was carried through streets lined with flowers and candles. Schoolmates stood silently holding white roses. During the funeral mass, The choir sang the hymn she had composed in her sleepless nights, "Let Me Lie Close to You." The melody rose through the nave, filling every corner of the church until even the priest's voice trembled. When the song ended, no one moved. It was as if the music had tied heaven and earth together for one suspended moment. In the months that followed, the Degan family received letters from people who had prayed to regain faith after hearing her story. Parents of sick children wrote that her courage gave them strength to face each new day. Journalists who visited the parish found no sensational details, only a family that spoke quietly of gratitude. Paula said, "She was not a miracle worker. She was a sign that faith itself is the miracle." Years later, photographs of the smiling little girl with the red ribbon in her hair would appear on devotional websites and parish bulletins. Her diary of short prayers was copied by hand and distributed in hospitals. One of the last lines she wrote reads, "Heaven is not far, it begins when we love." Her grave in Padua remains simple, just her name, 2 dates, and the phrase she repeated most. "Jesu, my fido di te Jesus, I trust in you." Visitors often leave drawings from children who never met her, but feel they know her. Some come searching for healing, others come for peace. Many leave with both. The story of Laura Degan is not about visions that can be proven or denied. It is about how faith can turn a hospital room into a sanctuary, how a child's prayer can outshine fear, and how mercy can transform pain into light. In her 6 years, she taught what most lives need decades to learn, that holiness can be small, quiet, and complete. After the funeral, the Degan house felt both emptier and strangely luminous. Paula and Paolo kept Laura's room exactly as she had left it. The little desk by the window still held the open notebook, where her last lines trembled in uneven handwriting. Her rosary hung from the bedpost, the beads polished by countless nights of prayer. Visitors said the space seemed untouched by time, as if the silence had become its own form of prayer. Within months, people began arriving quietly at the family's door. Some came from nearby parishes, others from cities as far as Milan and Verona. They did not ask for explanations. They simply wanted to see where the child had lived. Many brought drawings or short notes from their children. "Thank you for teaching me to love Jesus." The Degans welcomed everyone with coffee and humility, repeating that Laura had been ordinary, a little girl who trusted completely. The parish priest compiled her story from medical records, family letters, and the small diary found beside her bed. In 1996, he published a modest booklet titled Laura Degan: A Smile for Heaven. It spread quickly through northern Italy, carried by pilgrims to hospitals, schools, and Marian shrines. In every retelling, the same pattern appeared. The disease that should have broken a family instead became the place where mercy bloomed. Doctors who had treated her sent private letters to the parish. One wrote, "Science could not explain her serenity. She faced suffering as if she were watching the sunrise." Nurses described the way her presence changed the atmosphere of the ward. A mother whose child shared the same diagnosis later testified, "Laura's courage made us believe that faith still exists inside hospitals." In Padua, devotion to divine mercy deepened. Each year on the Sunday after Easter, families filled the church where Laura had received her first communion. The choir sang her hymn, "Let Me Lie Close to You." It became tradition to place a single white rose on the altar for every child who had died that year. The parish kept a candle burning beside Laura's photograph, its light reflected in the glass frame where her small handwriting could still be read. "Thank you, Jesus, for staying with me." Italian Catholic newspapers began writing short articles about her. They called her the Eucharistic Child, a symbol of innocent faith in an age losing its sense of the sacred. None claimed miracles. All agreed on one truth, that her story awakened something forgotten. the quiet strength of trust. In 2003, a local artist painted a mural inside the parish hall showing a field of lilies under an open sky. At the center stood a small girl holding a candle. Beneath it, the words from her diary, "Heaven begins when we love." It became a pilgrimage point for youth groups, who gathered there before visiting sick children in nearby hospitals. For them, Laura was not a legend, but a companion, a reminder that holiness could look like a child's smile in a hospital corridor. The DeGan family rarely spoke publicly. When journalists asked if they expected official recognition from the church, Paula replied, "We expect nothing. We already received everything faith." Her answer silenced speculation and kept the story pure, a testimony of gratitude rather than fame. Over time, priests began citing Laura's words in homilies about mercy. Seminaries included her letter to the Pope as an example of childlike theology, a prayer expressed through action. Her small offering for poor children had become a metaphor for spiritual generosity, giving the little one has without hesitation. Though decades have passed, her story continues to surface in unexpected places: articles, social posts, pilgrim testimonies. Each generation rediscovers her as if for the first time, drawn by the paradox she embodied: frailty that became strength, suffering that became song. In the broader church, her memory intertwines with the message of divine mercy revealed to Saint Faustina Kowalska, two souls separated by distance and time, yet united by the same truth, that God's mercy reaches even into human weakness and transforms it from within. For many Catholics, Laura's life is a modern echo of that revelation, a reminder that the message of mercy did not end in the 1930s. It continues in every heart that dares to trust. Each year, on the anniversary of her death, the bells of Padua ring at 1:50 p.m. Her parents, now older, sit quietly in the same pew where they once prayed for a miracle. They no longer ask why. They simply thank God for lending them a daughter who taught them how to hope. As the church fills with sunlight, they repeat her favorite line, the words she whispered in her final hours: "Let me lie close to you." In that refrain lies her entire theology, simple, complete, and alive. Through a child's suffering, the world glimpsed the mystery of mercy, not as doctrine, but as presence, the same presence she said once visited her room in the night. And somewhere beyond the reach of hospitals and hymns, that little voice still seems to sing. The story of a little girl from Padua might seem far removed from the noise of the present world. Yet every generation needs reminders of what faith looks like when it is stripped of luxury and fear. Laura's short life still speaks precisely because it was not grand. She did not preach, write books, or gather crowds. She simply trusted, and that trust became a mirror for anyone searching for meaning in chaos. In an age that measures worth by power, Laura stands as the opposite image: a child whose illness exposed not weakness but strength hidden in surrender. She faced suffering without bitterness, teaching through example that faith does not remove pain, it transforms it. When she prayed for others instead of herself, she offered an answer to one of humanity's oldest questions: how can love survive suffering? Her answer was lived, not spoken. It was in the way she smiled at nurses, in the way she sang when she could barely breathe, in her final words of gratitude after communion. Those gestures continue to ripple outward, touching strangers who never met her. Around the world, countless people carry unseen burdens: parents of sick children, those fighting despair, believers who doubt whether prayer still matters. Laura's story whispers to each of them that holiness is not beyond reach. It begins with a single act of trust, a whispered, "Jesus, I trust in you," uttered even when everything seems lost. This is why her story survives. Not because of extraordinary visions, but because of ordinary courage. Her light endures precisely where hope feels most fragile. In hospital rooms, in families waiting for news, in souls tempted to believe that God has fallen silent. Laura's faith answers that silence with a song. The church teaches that mercy is love meeting misery. Laura's 6 years on earth are proof of that definition. In her, misery met love and was changed. Her life continues to echo the same call that Saint Faustina once wrote. Before I come as the just judge, I first open wide the door of my mercy. For a moment, that door stood open in a small child's heart, and through it, light entered a darkened world. Every September, the bells of Padua ring softly at midday, and those who remember her pause for a moment of silence. The house where she once prayed is still there, small and unassuming, with a single candle in the window. Pilgrims say that at dusk, the flame flickers in a way that looks like it's breathing. Whether that is imagination or grace, no one can say, but it feels like a heartbeat, the rhythm of a child's unbroken trust. Laura Degan's name is carved in modest letters on a white marble cross. Beneath it, a short line reads, "Heaven begins when we love." Visitors trace those words with their fingers before walking away in quiet reflection. They know she was right. Heaven does not wait for the end of life. It begins wherever faith chooses love over fear. The wind through the cypress trees carries the faint echo of a melody once sung by a little girl who wanted to live close to God. That song still lingers not in sound, but in spirit, reminding us that mercy is never distant, that innocence still has power, and that the smallest lives can leave the largest light. And so, the story ends where it began, with a child and a prayer whispered into the silence. Let me lie close to you.